Let's talk about still life and compositions. Still lifes are defined as paintings, drawings, or photographs of objects arranged. These objects don't move and can be things like flowers, fruit, and bowls. Many artists over the centuries have used still lifes to improve their skills as artists in their particular genre of art. Now let's talk about some of the important parts of setting up a still life. Our first topic is hierarchy. Hierarchy simply means that objects that are closer to the viewer are lower on the paper. In this example, that would be our leaves. The next thing to consider is overlap. To create an interesting image, you want objects that overlap each other. Objects that are closer to the viewer overlap objects that are behind that object. In this image, the small pumpkin overlaps the larger pumpkin. And the next thing I want you to consider is proportion. Proportion describes the relationship between the dimensions of different elements. Meaning, if you were to draw the picture on the screen, the pumpkin that overlaps the large pumpkin will be significantly smaller. We could even use that pumpkin as a measurement tool. If you were to measure the length of the small pumpkin, you could fit 2 of the length of the pumpkin into the width of the larger pumpkin. That's how you know you've got the measurement right. Proportion is really important. Really look at how objects fit with one another. Is one object as tall as another? Is it 3 times as wide as it is tall? These kind of details are important when it comes to drawing things accurately. Now let's talk about composition. Composition is the setup that you give your artwork. A good composition helps the subject that you're trying to communicate be better understood. It leads the eye of the observer throughout the image and emphasizes a focal point. The compositional rule that we'll be using for this assignment is the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a guideline that's used to create an interesting composition that easily draws the viewer's eye across the entire scene. The rule of thirds is a theory that if you divide your surface area into 3 sections, vertically and then horizontally, and place your important elements where those intersections happen, you create a dynamic and more pleasing composition for your viewer, creating an image that your viewer wants to view for a longer period of time, which is the point when you're creating art. Here's one way that we can use the rule of thirds to set up a good still life. As you can see, I have all of the elements that we talked about, and I have the rule of thirds up on my camera. Each of those corners has an interesting line or something that needs to be seen. Another thing to think about is the orientation of your picture. Does it make more sense for it to go landscape or portrait? Interesting cropping is another way to go. Do you need an open composition where the image leads off of the picture plane and leads your viewer to fill in the blanks? Or does it make more sense to have everything encapsulated in the photo itself? Also, creating an L shape can be a very helpful way to set up your picture plane. Again, you need to think about landscape or portrait, as well as your cropping. Consider interesting viewpoints and different angles. With any combination of these ideas and guidelines, you can come up with a great still life to paint, draw, or photograph.